Well, that was stressful. That was a very stressful few minutes here in the studio. We apologize for the tech issues that we had, and we hope that will be all. So we're now here with our amazing speakers, and we are going to ask some questions. Owen, could we pin Owen, please, so we can see Owen? I can see his back, Owen Moore. And then I think we've got everyone. We're going to start with a question for Sneha and Rosa. So first question is, what was your biggest challenge that you faced while learning to be a strong advocate?
I can take that one. Sneha's having a little bit of technical difficulty and is hopefully going to be able to join us in a second.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think for myself, I know we got a question about this earlier, actually, just in terms of addressing internalized ableism and that sort of thing. And I think that can be a big struggle for a lot of folks, is just kind of figuring out how to work through the messages that we've been told often for our whole lives, just about the way that people's bodies, quote unquote, should be working, or what we should be able to do. So I think for myself, that was one of the hardest things to work through. I think also just in terms of advocacy, something that's been a struggle for me is just having to. There are so many great physicians out there, but I think one thing that can be frustrating is when you've had negative interactions with the medical field, just kind of constantly being in that space can sometimes be a tricky situation as well.
Thank you. Question for Jessica. Do you feel like your co-workers understand you better if you tell them that you have some disabilities?
That's a really great question. And, I have to say I struggle with that because I work in the medical field, and I honestly am worried about differences in being treated and how and being judged. So I haven't shared with everyone. I have shared with one coworker about having Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she took it very well. She was very understanding. She was very, very helpful and really went out of her way to make sure that my needs were met. I had some other coworkers. So I was wearing a Aspen Vista collar for a while, and I don't need it every day anymore, but I did have to address that at work. So I kind of tailored what I told people to different things, and I found that they were really understanding and really supportive. But I don't know if it really changed their interactions with me positively or negatively. So I feel like as far as the work situation with disclosing, I'm still in the early phases there.
Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
helpful. Question for Owen. When you decided to do a fundraiser, what were some key things that you took away from it?
When I decided to do a fundraiser, I definitely, some of the key things that I took away from it were definitely anchoring your fundraiser in advocacy work with like awareness things, like making sure that you have the right information at these events that you're hosting. I think that's super important. You want your your community members, the people that are attending your event, you want them to fully understand what you're raising money for, what you're raising awareness for. So the Ehlers-Danlos Society has great printable materials on their website that you can print out and have at different events that you host. It doesn't even have to be an event, even if you're hosting like a table to spread more information or awareness. It's just really super important. I know at my event last, I think it was February, I had like a whole table that you saw in my presentation with pamphlets that were from the Ehlers-Danlos Society website. It really just gives the community members attending your event more information on all the subtypes of EDS, because you might not have time to discuss all of that. And it really just gives them the opportunity to learn more if they're interested, and gives them more information on where the funds might be going and what the work the society does.
Fantastic, thank you. We've actually just had a message come in, Owen, from someone who's just finished the Junior Zebras program with their daughter, but they said that they wanted their daughter to watch your video so that she can see what she can do when she uses her voice. So I thought that you would want to hear that, because I think it was inspirational what you did at a younger age to just show the power of what advocacy can do. So thank you again. So back to Sneha and Rosa. Is Rosa with us now? Just Sneha. Okay. So just Rosa. Okay, thank you. Okay, so Rosa, any tips for university students who have to deal with unsupportive disability units and systems? For example, even with the doctor report, I got a letter grade down because I missed some lectures and I had a severe infection and I was fighting for my life. How could you give advice in your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know it's something that a lot of folks who are pursuing higher education or college or grad school deal with often. I guess one of my main tips, I think, would just be like, as tough as it is, just keep advocating. Try and find, I know there, if there's more than one person you can talk to at the disability center, maybe try speaking with different people, see if maybe there's an advocate there who can offer, more support than whoever you've spoken with in the past. I think it's really important. I mean, one thing that was helpful for me was being really open with my professors, although it can be kind of uncomfortable, just so they understand the impact that your health condition is having on your life, and why you may not be attending class all the time, or what's actually going on. Because I know I've had some situations where professors weren't very understanding. I sat down and had a meeting with them and tried to describe, like, in detail, like, these are the reasons why I'm not able to come to class. I'm actually, I have to go get an infusion or have to, like, XYZ. And I think after hearing some really, like, concrete ways of how my condition was impacting my life and my ability to attend class or do work, etc., I think that was really helpful. I know Sneha also put in the question and answer section, there is Health Advocacy Summit has about 2 virtual support meetings per month for grad and undergrad students who are dealing with chronic medical disabilities. So she put the link in there, but it is www.healthadvocacysummit.org/high-risk students. And they have a lot of resources there as well, if anybody wants to take a look at that.
Thank you so much. And we've got a question here for Laura. Laura, what should we talk about more when we're discussing about EDS and HSD and related conditions?
That's a really great question. I think one of the biggest things for me is having one of the rarer subtypes of EDS. I think it's really important that is something that's talked about, that EDS itself is not one diagnosis, it's a group of diagnoses. And I think a lot of times medical professionals can get it mixed up in their head that hypermobile EDS is all people with EDS. So I think being really careful when you are talking and sharing your experience to talk about what subtype you have, or if you're able to share some very basic information about some of the other subtypes. That's a great way to use your voice to help advocate for others as well as yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Just if we could scroll up so I could see a question for Jessica, please. Thank you. So Jessica, this one's for you. With being your own advocate and knowing your symptoms so well, how do you walk the fine line of not getting a doctor seeker label?
That is a great question. And honestly, throughout my life before I was diagnosed with EDS, I was very worried about that. And to this day, I still am. Whenever I see a new doctor, I end up, unfortunately, with a lot of worry beforehand and anxiety, which I'm working through. However, I share, it really depends on how they interact with me at the beginning, but I typically share about my history and where kind of I've been, and so I've started sharing about EDS and kind of the, not really the missteps that were taken, but that this is really tough because it's a really challenging thing, and doctor seeker label is really, really deeply upsetting to get, because then that can be passed on to other ones of your physicians. But I've tried to be candid with other folks about what has happened, the misdiagnoses, what I'm dealing with now, and I try to take everything back to research. So I've learned so much through these kinds of talks with EDS and the EDS echo programs, and just research on EDS about what might be going on with my body and what happens in EDS. And so I try to bring it back to the literature and my diagnosis and my experience, but it is really challenging. I also try, and I saw that this was a question somewhere else, I try to seek out doctors who are very familiar with EDS, have an understanding of what we've gone through, some of whom have EDS themselves. And that way I know that they will have an understanding of what our experiences have been like. I also poll other friends who have EDS or people that I know through EDS groups, so that I don't end up seeing somebody who might perceive me as a doctor seeker, because I have been there, done that, and I did not enjoy those experiences.
Thank you. Question for Owen. What would you recommend is the best way that someone can become a volunteer?
I would definitely just say, reaching out to, whether it's the EDS Society or just in your local community. There's definitely many ways to volunteer. You just have to be willing to take that first step in reaching out and asking, if there's tasks to be done. And yeah, I think that'll really serve you well if you can just take that first step of reaching out, and the rest will follow suit.
Thank you. Question for Laura. What is the most important thing that you have learned on your journey so far?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is probably that I have a good instinct about my own health and what's happening in my own body, and I need to trust myself and know that if I think something is off or something is wrong, there's a pretty good chance that something is wrong and that it does warrant attention, even if other people are not agreeing with that decision. It's okay to stick by your gut and say, no, I know that this isn't normal for me.
Thank you. And Rosa, someone here, and I'm going to read their quote. I feel like I can't get any sort of help because I still live with family, so I don't qualify. I feel I'm in a bad cycle of I can't be independent because I can't do it on my own, and I can't get help because I'm not on my own. Is the HAS something that could help me, even though I'm no longer a young adult? I have felt so left in the weeds.
Yeah, I can definitely take a shot at that, and I wish Sneha was here because it's her organization and she, she runs everything. But I think it's definitely worth checking out. I definitely would recommend. I believe she put the link in the question and answer as well for the sign up for the virtual international summit that is coming up, I think in August. But honestly, the summits are just incredible, and I think regardless of age, there's topics that are so important for everybody to hear. I'm just trying to find. Yes, Sneha did post the link, and I can post that again, maybe in the chat. But yeah, I would highly recommend reaching out I mean, I think the Health Advocacy Summit uses the term young adult as a very wide range. So I would definitely recommend checking some of the groups out, checking out the resources that they have.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Question for Jessica. We've had a few questions come in about disability lawyers. So I'm going to try and summarize them. Is there a resource for a list of disability lawyers? And does it matter if they are familiar with hypermobile EDS or any types of EDS? And I guess people asking, do you know a lawyer familiar with this kind of discrimination? But I think that if there was a list somewhere you could point people to, that would probably take care of those questions.
Sure. So I don't know of a list off the top of my head, but there is, and I will put it in the chat if I get the name wrong. There is a gentleman who I spoke to who his company is really fantastic about disability law. And he has said to me that he's okay with me sharing his information. He's happy to talk to anybody, and especially particularly in the United States, and guide them towards someone in their area who is comfortable with disability law. As far as do they need to know about EDS? I don't necessarily know. I think if you were to, when you meet with them, if you were to give them a couple of handouts, maybe from the 2017 criteria and some of those associated like syndromes and symptoms, that could be helpful, or any other information you've found on online that's got some good, like a small, easy to read, but good information on EDS that can be helpful just so they can understand better what you're going through. But someone who has a really good background in disability law and discrimination, I believe, should be fine. However, if you can find someone who does have a lot of information and especially experience in working with folks with EDS, I think having that experience and knowing what might go awry with their case might be more important than knowing about the symptoms and the difficulties with EDS itself. But I will look up his information. I think his name is Andrew Cantor, and I will put in the chat or in the Q&A or both his information, so you guys can reach out to him, and then he can guide you as to where in the country, because he's worked all over.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Question for Owen. How important is it, in your opinion, to include a fundraising aspect to advocacy?
I definitely think fundraising is a super important aspect of advocacy, but I don't think it's the only part of advocacy. I definitely think when you're, doing a fundraiser, there are multiple parts of it. There's a lot of different moving parts. Advocacy, I definitely think, as I said before, kind of anchors the fundraiser. And advocacy mainly is the heart of your fundraiser. You're trying to get more awareness out there for, whether you're advocating for EDS and HSD or any other condition. But I definitely think fundraising gets your community voice out there. You can't do it alone. You need those other members in the community having your back and supporting the EDS and HSD community. So I definitely think fundraising is super important to kind of like rally the troops and get kind of everybody on the same page and get them aware of EDS and HSD.
Brilliant. Thank you. Question for Laura. In your experience, how would you recommend choosing a primary care practitioner?
That's definitely been something that I've had a lot of trial and error with. Usually what I try to do is I try to research what hospitals the physicians are associated with first, and make sure that they're associated with a hospital that I've had good experiences with, or that other aspects of my care are through already, just for ease of communication. But then beyond that, I tend to look either in some of like the EDS community groups and see if people have had recommendations of someone that they've had a really great experience with, or I try to look at what sort of things, like usually they have like a little bio on the webpage for the practice about like the different physicians. So trying to look at that and try to find someone who's a good match, both in personality wise is important for me, but also someone who's open to working with people who have a chronic condition, which a lot of times, at least in my area, that is like a filter that you can put on at a lot of these different practices when you're searching, is people who have experience dealing with patients with chronic illnesses. So that's definitely important for me too. But it is kind of a trial and error, and it can be okay to say, like, this is not working out and I need to fire my doctor and try someone new, because you deserve to have someone who's going to work with you and is willing to listen to you.
Absolutely. I think that shouldn't be said enough, really, that people just don't think they have that choice, and everyone is absolutely entitled to it. Definitely. Rosa, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but hopefully you will, because it's a question for Sneha. But are you open to international summits for the HAS, whether that be online or organized by representatives across different countries?
Yeah, I can give that a shot. So the last summit, actually in 2020, was international, and I believe 2021 is also set to be international because both were online. There were speakers from all around the globe, which was great. So yeah, I don't know what the plan is for future summits, past 2021, but I think it was an incredible experience to be able to do that, and would definitely, again, recommend checking it out. I put the link in the chat. Hopefully that worked.
Thank you. Question for Jessica. Do you have any suggestions for how to get medical providers on the same team?
That is a fantastic question. So I would start with a couple of things. One, and somebody had answered this earlier, of in the chat, of making sure that you sign a release of information to get everyone on your team on board and allowed to listen to everyone, to talk and interact with your other providers. If there are certain providers that you want to make sure are able to have a conversation, speak to whichever one either has the most time availability or seems most willing to contact the other, and let them know what you'd like them to discuss as far as continuity of care. But I would also see if there is one person who seems on your team who seems to be kind of a natural fit for a leader. So a lot of times it might be your physiatrist, if you have one, or somebody like that, maybe a rheumatologist. Probably those would be the two best. That might be the kind of team leader, team communicator, since that's a little bit more in line with what they do. They do a lot of the referrals to other types of providers and follow-ups with the patient. So that would probably be the best person to make sure information's being sent to all the other people on the team, that everyone is on board on the team. When you see those providers, I would also recommend talking to them and letting them know up front that you do want everyone to be in communication, that you do want there to be communication, not just, okay, well, check in about this, or if they answer your call, answer, but you do want to make sure that information is being sent back and forth to these folks, and that occasionally you will ask them to make a call to someone else on your team to coordinate care that way. So that's really what I would recommend.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We've now come to the end of that section, and it's one of my favorites. I think it's so important to highlight the voices of advocates all over the world. That's why we're so proud of our EDS ECHO advocacy program, the first of its kind in Project ECHO. And we have incredible alumni now from all over the world, and really proud of everyone that's coming through that, and also all the other advocates out there helping to raise awareness of all these conditions and more. It's truly the strength of what is behind the community, getting the narrative out there of why we're all doing what we're doing. So thank you so much to all of our speakers today for sharing your story. I'd also like to take this moment to let you all know we had an incredible first ever Junior Zebras program today, running in parallel with this live event. And we had children from all over the world coming together and meeting people, sometimes for the first time, who truly understood. And I sat in on a few of the talks, and it was absolutely heartwarming to see them all sharing talking together. We had some amazing speakers, fantastic conversation, and they're all going to stay in touch with each other afterwards. And it just reminds us of the power of what happens when we bring the community together. So it's time for another wiggle. So please enjoy your 20 minutes and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you.